Okay, I think I was doing that. Oh, there we go. We are live. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where everyone is in the world today. So I do have to share one little anecdote real quick of something that just made me laugh over the weekend. Because I was thinking about how every so now and then, not so much these days I've noticed, but definitely back in the day, news anchors, the intro and outro, they would often catch them like having a
Yeah,
conversation or at the end,
yes.
like, okay, we're clear, and then they wouldn't be clear. And
Yeah,
I was just chuckling about it because I was like, it kind of happens to us. And it
it
actually just
does.
feels nice. No. Yeah,
Yes. Like
interesting.
we're normal. We're not perfect.
We are indeed. We are indeed very normal people living out, trying, not trying to, we are engaging and living our best lives every day and hopefully sharing that with everybody else.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to our topic today. And I love the fact that both Laura and myself were kind of thinking about this the whole weekend, even though we only really settled on this as our final topic for today. But Laura, you actually put it so perfectly earlier. Why don't you lead us in?
Yes. Good morning. Good afternoon. Yeah, we were talking about when we have a lot going on, and many of us, most of us do,
Hmm.
especially when I consider us like entrepreneurial engineers, right? We're always designing and redesigning and recalibrating thought into manifestation. And at times, our bodies don't necessarily keep up with the speed of creation, the speed of desire, goals, and dreams. And again, manifesting from hard work and a lot of thought put into
Mm.
it. And we get run down, or some of us get, very sick, or, it could be very simple. You can stub a toe or, have a little paper cut. It sounds maybe a bit off, but this is what happens. This is the body letting us know, like, pay attention, slow down. Maybe it's time for a cup of tea or a walk, or just a moment to, make yourself something to eat or read a book or meditate. And I think really learning the difference of when we're pushing too much and when, we need rest and to up our nutrients and, our supplements and have some nice bone broth or homemade soups, and really just finding that balance of
Mm.
creation and rest, and what that looks like, the balance of that. And it's real important, I think, for you and I. We're talking this out in real time as we're going through this. We are really in a such a beautiful, creative space, and we will be for a while to come. And taking very good care of our mind, our body, and our consciousness in the process, so we can show up for the community that we will continue to build and be examples of what that balance looks like.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is, I think, the key here for what kind of sets us apart is the fact that we're literally doing it in real time with our
Yeah.
audience. We're applying it to ourselves, and
Yeah.
that's really great to witness. But this was very much on my mind for this entire weekend because I was just thinking to myself, was actually kind of yesterday. I thought, well, I had planned to do all this work, and even today I was like, really, really push. And yesterday something just sort of said, no, just chill, lay on your bed, read your book for a few hours, go for a walk on the beach, come back, make something nice to eat. Do not even pick up your laptop. Don't even look at your phone. Just do nothing. I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's weird that that's, such a, I'm getting that strong feeling to just do that. And even into this morning, like I said, I'd planned this huge, big push for today and for the rest of the week. And something said to me again, just relax a bit into it. Don't have a huge, you know, energetic outward display. And I couldn't help but think about the card draw that we did on Friday, where it was showing all these new blessings coming in. But before that, it's saying rest, take some time. And I was still thinking, but why is it to kind of give us, or myself at least, give me space to sort of take that calm before the storm? Is it that it's prepping me? And sort of halfway through my morning routine, it actually hit me that the reason for me personally why I needed to do this, because there was no illness or anything like that coming up to, try and force me to slow down. But it suddenly hit me that the reason why I wanted to take this time and to rest and recuperate a little bit more is because I have not taken time over the last 10 days to just be grateful for what we've already done. I didn't have the time to sit and look at the beauty that we had already created.
Yeah.
Taking that time off and away from working in everything gave my soul and mind to go, do you realize that you had 3 client activations in the last week? You've launched 4 new podcasts with your business partner, Laura. You guys have come up with incredible plans and ideas around what you're going to be doing to roll this out. And most of that will come to fruition in the month of September. And you haven't taken a single moment to just appreciate that.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful point to actually continue to make, even somewhere throughout all of what we're creating, and even a gentle reminder, whether it's at the opening or the closing or somewhere in between, even for the community, just to remember to have a moment throughout each day. I was writing something in relation to Queen Elizabeth passing, and then we had 9/11. There was a
Mm,
lot of talk all around different, points of connection for me over the weekend about just how certain things are affecting, you know, individual people. And there was a story about Duke Ellington and Queen Elizabeth, and just something he did for her, and it was the way it was written was so profound and so heartfelt that it, for me, it dissolved judgments and looking at monarchy and looking at, all of the play out of this, and just human to human, the thought
mm,
process and how it was presented to the queen and how it was received by her. It brought this very beautiful aspect of humanness into who we all really are, after you remove these layers, right, of the thought algorithms that we talk about and someone else's ideas that become ours. If we really are left alone to just think about the gratitude of where we are. And that isn't
mm,
saying that, some people are in very challenging times at the moment. And this is not to push that aside and just be like, oh, just start thinking positively and life will just unfold. And we talk about this often. Find something always. It could be that you are healthy. Maybe at the moment, money or love isn't flowing, but you're healthy. Or even if you maybe are struggling with an illness or a dis-ease of some sort in the mind and the body, find something. There is always a point of gratitude. And when we find it, and then we really gain momentum through that. I
mm,
know, unless you experience this, it's maybe challenging to understand. So we'll challenge maybe at the end today about this gratitude momentum, or momentum of gratitude. I did the exact same thing. I went to reach out to you yesterday, and something said, nope, nope, just leave it alone, because we do so much creation during the week. And we worked on our property and all in the gardens getting ready for our spring season. And I used that as a gratitude exercise. I easily could have gone out and just been overwhelmed at all of the cutting back and the prepping for our winter season. And instead, I looked at the flowers that were still in bloom. I looked at the grass that was still green. I looked at the beauty of what my husband and I work for. And I just sat back and I just had this awe. And had I just kept moving and not become aware of the exercise the discipline, the application of gratitude, I would have let that all gone by. And while I was gardening, I did gratitude work for you and I, and our friendship, and what we're creating, and what we so much want to pour out into the global family. So find something every day. Could be as simple as I have a toothbrush, I have toilet paper, I have heat, I have water, I have shelter, I have food. It really is the way interconnectivity begins to connect,
Hmm.
universal connection.
I think what I love about gratitude in general is it's so deeply humbling because,
Mm,
like you said, you mentioned about doing the gardening, and then it made you realize that you had all these things to be grateful for. And it doesn't have to be big things, like you said. It can be small things in our lives. But what I
yeah,
find so beautiful about it is once you start a gratitude exercise, it almost becomes difficult to stop because
yeah,
things just start to interconnect, and you realize, oh well, I have a toothbrush, but I got to wake up in order to use that. Oh, I
yes,
actually had a good night's sleep. I was rested. That's amazing. And then it just starts to build out from there. And then you realize that the people you're working with are supportive, and your
yeah,
friends and your family, and it goes out and out and out. And before you know it, you're just in awe at how incredible life is. Not to say, like we mentioned, that there aren't challenges.
right,
Absolutely there are,
right.
right? Um, And I
I
always used to have a very pessimistic take on all of this, where I would say every every silver lining has a cloud, which is technically true, but it depends on our perspective. What are we going to focus on? Are we going to choose to focus on the silver lining, or are we going to choose to focus on the cloud?
I remember, this is very powerful to share, and I won't get into all the details, but I was listening to a gentleman very well known out in the world, and he was talking about a point in his life where he wanted to just end his life. There was many things, a decades long marriage that faltered, a beautiful business that went under. I mean, just he was just hit left and right, and he was in a very dingy, like, hotel by the airport kind of room, and it was dark and it was dirty, and he just had hit the skids, as we call it, hit the ground,
Mm,
and he was down, and he was getting ready to write a suicide note, and he had a piece of paper and a pencil that he found in the drawer, and as he was writing, he remembered training from way back about gratitude, and he started to think about all the things that were amazing, but then all the fear and all the depression settled in, and all of a sudden he looked at the pencil and he said, I can write anything I choose. It does not have to be this. I can use this pencil with this eraser, erase what I had just wrote, and write something more uplifting, more happy, more grateful. And he
just
just went on,
beautiful.
yes. And he ended up writing all of the things that he experienced in his life that he was grateful for. And that is what pushed him forward. And then he became, I'm not going to say who it is, but he became a very well known life coach in the world. And when you hear this story, and for many of us, you can even look at the great Anthony Robbins, and he tells a story about sitting on the beach, overweight, depressed, wanting to end it all, and finding a moment of gratitude. There's a reason why this word is in the global lexicon. There's something about the construct of the word and the vibration and the frequency when we say, please, universe, however you look, pray, or do your thought work, help me find something to be grateful for. You will be amazed at how the alchemy of the world works.
Mhm.
Ask, something comes in. You may fight it, you may struggle with it, but hold on to that, because there's a reason why everyone is here. There's a reason why we make it past those challenging times. And it is through gratitude, remembering a moment in life where someone showed you kindness and love or just compassion. Use that to instill that gratitude. So, again, to bring it more uplifting, when we get a little bit overrun with creation and challenges, just think, wow, this is pretty cool. I actually have
Mm.
the ability to think differently, to help advance this moment into something more positive, more neutral, more compassionate for myself.
You've touched on something so incredibly, well, not touched on, you've gone in quite deep into something so incredibly powerful there. And that is free will, the freedom to choose, to make a choice. There's one thing, I'm sure a lot of our audience have seen The Matrix, but there's a lot of truisms that came out in that movie. It was deeply, or movies are deeply philosophical. The one I didn't agree with, or I agree with in terms of it's how most people see the world, but it's not true, is where they say choice is an illusion. It doesn't exist. There's only why. I completely disagree with that because for many people, choice feels like an illusion because we feel like we don't have the right to make a different choice. And I hear this all the time when I'm speaking to some of my clients and they've gone down a path. Maybe they started creating something incredible, and 6 months, a year in, it's no longer aligned with what they're wanting to achieve in their lives anymore. And I get this throwback of, but I can't do anything different because I've already started down this path. I can't choose to do something different because what will people think, or what about all the work I've already done? And that's a misnomer. We have choice available to us every single moment of every day. Like that gentleman you were speaking of who was depressed in his hotel room, starting to write a suicide note, and chose in that moment to use
Yeah.
the power of creation not to end his life, but to extend it.
And
That is just incredible amount of power right there.
And that's why I love this story. I mean, I have countless stories over the years that have just stayed in my heart. Um, I write about this in the Science of Empowerment, and again, I use this when we talk about gratitude, and with clients. There's a beautiful story of Mother Teresa, and she was being interviewed by a well-known, um, I'm going to say, a radio personality, and they got into many, many points, as you can imagine, of humanity and compassion. And this gentleman said, what may I do for you? What can I give you? What can I buy you? What can I do for you? And of course, Mother Teresa responded. And it was so powerful in my life. I heard about this and read about this when I was very young, and it stayed with me so much that decades later, I put it in the book. And she said, just, I'm asking everyone, tomorrow or wherever you are in the world, to go out into your day and find someone that feels alone and remind them that they are not. And think about that. Just think about that statement for a moment. The gratitude to, number one, hear that has stayed with me my whole adult life, to remind
Mm.
me to be less judgmental on myself first, so that I know what that feeling is, so that out in the world I'm less judgment. And when we have less judgment, we're able to expand what compassion feels like and looks like. And in
Yep.
that expansion is the power and the force of gratitude, because we all are in this together. We are all same in heart and soul, and the way that we move through our days. We know what family looks like, and we know what being protected of that family, whatever family looks like. We have commonalities that are the golden thread of humanness. And gratitude for me, aside from love, gratitude is it. Gratitude. It is so important to experience that for yourself. And then when you begin this mastery, this discipline of applying it every day, and I do, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes the norm. And this almost, Hmm. I'm not going to say it's like a fortress of protection, because fortress means walls, but I don't mean fortress in that sense. I mean the energetic field around you becomes so expansive, because you can look out. So every day when we do our podcast, I have visions, not visions. I look out of my property, and all I see are the tops of these massive trees, all in our neighborhood. Every moment I look, and it keeps me connected, because I think of trees and how rooted, even though they are beautiful and full of branches and full of their own seasonal changes and all of this, they're rooted. They know their place in this existence. And they remind me to be grateful, because we are all learning our place in this existence. And the wealth of self and everything that we're creating is here to remind you to know that you have a specific value into the global connection. And when you find the gratitude for that value, that exchange, your life really will become so much more full of happiness and understanding. But it is a discipline, and it is a practice, but it's a beautiful
Yep.
practice.
I actually do like the word fortress, but for a slightly different reason. Because something that actually occurred to me yesterday whilst I was taking my 24-hour long siesta, essentially, and just chilling out, is
Nice.
at one point I did pick up my phone and I saw one of the many newsletters had come through during the day, because I subscribe to different news sites, Washington Post, CNN, Fox, all of those,
Right.
just to see, so that I always know what's kind of going on in the world. And I saw, I don't know, I can't remember whose it was, but I saw this newsletter come through. And my knee-jerk reaction would normally be to just open it immediately and see what horrific thing had happened. And I was like, as I was about to do that, I thought, well, we already know that the Queen passed on, I think it was Friday.
Yeah.
And we know that things have escalated in the Ukraine. We
Mm-hmm.
know that there's other new issues coming out of China. I was like, so I can choose to stay in this vibration of gratitude where I'm at,
Mm-hmm.
or I can let in this hyper sensationalized energy into my field, which is just going to bring me back down again. I'm not saying that these things are not happening, they are. However, on the flip side, as you said earlier, with the Queen passing, and I brought this up to a friend of mine as well. I said I have one of two options here. I can either go on this whole long thing about how phenomenal her life was, etc., 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 or I can go down this whole rabbit hole about how evil a monarchy is. Or third option, I can choose to see her as someone's mother and grandmother.
Yes. That's exactly what I did.
Right?
I did the same
And
thing.
it just, what brought it home for me was everybody that I was speaking to, and again, because I have friends who have wildly diverse opinions on just about anything that we bring up,
Right.
there was a lot of this, what's I'm just going to use that word again, hyper sensationalized energy around it. Whether it was
Yeah.
negative or positive in their viewpoint, it was hyper sensationalized. And when I just turned around and said, can we all just take a step back and see a person for being just a person? We've all
Right.
been there. We've all lost a grandmother, right?
Yeah.
It's happened to us. We know what that feels like. It's not a nice place to be. Why are we focusing on all of these peripheral things around it, which just, I think, serves to actually take away from the moment?
Yes. I thought about that, same thing, and that's what I brought it down to, and Bruce and I, my husband, we were talking about this. Every one of us has this play out, right? We're
Mm,
born, we live our life, and then we transition. And all of this in between, on one hand, is such an individualized journey, and yet on the other hand, it is a union of global experiences. And this is such a beautiful point that you just made. If again we bring it down to the very basics of humanness, it was a human being that lived her play out the way she did, and it affected, and then again all that sensationalism all around it, but she really was a woman at 21. Her father died. She became queen. She lived it out the way she did. And all of the other players came around it, including how we view it, how we judge it, how we take it in. I think she was a real example right now in real time of, can you just let her be a mom, let her be a grandmother? Because there were many pictures that they were showing between her and the grandchildren. And you can see, and that because I was very close to my grandmother, I was like, she was just their grandmama. That is
yep.
it, period. I don't need to get wrapped up right now because we know what's coming, anyways. The monarchy has to change. What's Prince William and Duchess Kate going to do, and all of that? We already know what's going to come down the path here. And there's a lot of real moments of shifting that needs to happen, because that's an antiquated mindset of what's been going on. And we all understand this. But let's now, here's a great example of gratitude. Let's be grateful for the example, the negative and the positive of what that presented.
Mm,
Now let's take that and use that for wherever we are in the world, and find something that we can be grateful for, either how it positively could affect us, or maybe the contrast of how maybe the monarch negatively affected. And then let's have hope and gratitude for the change and the shift that's going to
yes.
come. So again, here's an example of how we can look at things. You know, we went through again another anniversary of 9/11. It's the way that it hits us. It's the way that we talk about it. There's always someone somewhere that was, because we live very close to New York. We had many
Mm,
people that worked there that were in those buildings. We know someone, one of our kids went to school with someone. It's this consistent reminder, and then it can get sensationalized here in the States, and then it gets dragged all down to this path. I chose, again, where's the gratitude? And yesterday, on Sunday, when we were working on the property this weekend, I thought about the men and the mindset, and the women, but it was mostly men around the firefighters and the police in there. I thought about just looking at the gratitude of bravery, and the heroes that did go back into the buildings and did go to try to save and ended up giving their life in exchange for that. I just chose to look at not what evil did, but of what the graciousness of the humans in that moment of evil, what they individually tried to do, and the pride that the families. And this is, again, these conversations that we're having out for our community under the wealth of self. It is to just remind ourselves and one another that there is always a way to recalibrate our thinking, so that something of purpose comes out of it. So we can now go out into our day and create purpose and value and compassion and gratitude for even someone just right in our family or a neighbor when we're at the
mm,
market. So it's important, as you hear Stefan and I talk about all these world events, we really always bring them back down to the humanness and the compassion and the understanding.
So here's, as you were saying all of that, I kind of thought of a little challenge for all of us, because something that we see so often, and coming back to 9/11 as well, the anniversary of that horrific, just tragedy that should never have occurred.
Mm.
I always find it so interesting that in the wake of tragedies like that, whether it's a natural disaster or something man-made like that, there's always this outpouring of, as you say, graciousness. You know, the human spirit really gets to shine through in how everybody comes together, puts aside their differences, puts aside everything else, and just embraces compassion and the work that needs to happen in order to rebuild.
Right.
The challenge I would like to make to each of us is, instead of waiting for something horrific to happen like that, what can we do each moment of each day to embody that? Because if we did, and I think about literally I remember the news reports in the wake of 9/11, how people just literally all came together to
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
There was no, I'm brown, you're white, you're yellow, you're this, you're, what's your
No.
sexual orientation, you're not going to lift bricks with me. Because no, it was just, we're here to save lives, we're here to see what we can do.
But look how quickly in the US, look how quickly that has faded. Look at the division that we're going through. After 9/11, almost every home across our nation had American flags, flowers. People were out
Yeah.
talking. We were bringing food to it was a whole it was the way that we should have kept that momentum, and now look at us. This is why what we're doing in the science of empowerment and everything that we are working towards creating for me is so important. We do not hold the frequency of higher thinking. We slip right back into the
Mm,
algorithm of the outdated patterns. We just falter back into the reasons that they're in place to begin with, i.e., the contrast to advance us, to evolve us. And we didn't. We evolved for a moment in time after the tragedy because the human force evolved, because we had to all rise up to that level of thought, that level of compassion. We held our families differently for months after that
mm,
because we were together. And now look at us. How do you get into the human psyche and explain how we went through something collectively as a family, and now we're all back fighting against each other? For someone like me, it makes no sense at all. So again, to bring this to gratitude, it is, find it within yourself and express it, create it, gift it as much as possible so you can hold the vibration of what that actually means. And then you will have positive effect on another, and they will start to hold that vibration of gratitude and humanness. And then we start to begin that effect to one another. We build a community 1,000,000 strong through the wealth of self. Guess what? We will be 1,000,000 strong points of vibration, of compassion and gratitude, where that fortress of knowledge will not be broken down. No matter what happens, we will hold that together so that 1,000,000 strong holds it. And then we become that beacon, that reflection of how it can be done. This is how we create positive advancement in the human condition.
it's exactly that. It's just coming back to the basics and holding on to that day in, day out,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
spreading it out. I actually had an interesting discussion with someone over the weekend, because we were talking about an interesting dynamic that was unfolding in our friend circle, where one person was being how shall we say, difficult. They've been a little bit difficult over the last week or so, and a lot of my friends we know getting quite angry, and we've spoken to him and we can't understand why he's being like this and blah 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 blah, and this is what we're going to do in retaliation. Not exactly in so many words, but essentially.
Right.
And I felt myself starting to get swept up in the
Yeah.
dialogue and the energy and everything else. And a part of me just went, stop, just for one moment, and re-look at everything from a bird's eye view. And it took a moment, not even a full second, to do that. And I came back in and I said, well, now hang on. This is someone who's been our friend for quite some time. He's obviously going through something because, again, that old adage of hurt people hurt people.
Right.
I said, but now what is interesting to me is instead of us just taking the oxygen away from the fire and not giving it attention, everybody seems to want to be throwing fuel on the fire.
Mm.
But when everybody's building the bonfire bigger and bigger and bigger, everybody gets burnt.
Yeah.
And I could see a lot of people didn't really like that because I got some glares, and I get it because the human if the human sense of justice is wounded, we want to
Right.
have our little say, right? It's our pride, it's our ego, and those
Right.
things are necessary for our survival, absolutely. But in the long run, one has to just kind of keep thinking, if I stay in that attitude of gratitude, in that space of compassion, how would I act? And if I was in a space where I had been hurt and was lashing out, what would
Mm.
I prefer? Would I prefer compassion, or
Yeah.
would I that would bring me hopefully back to a space of alignment, or would I prefer somebody to continuously be throwing fuel on that fire?
That's such a beautiful example where you had the opportunity to look at all parties and say, we have the ability to recalibrate this entire experience to whatever word you want to put to it, create a more positive outcome, to up level, to
Mm,
advance. We can actually inject compassion into this situation rather than the contrasting negative energy, more fuel on the fire for a person that was
yes,
hurt, the person that did the hurting. Let's talk. We are adults. We have skills. We have knowledge. We have experience. We do not have to go back to, like, we're 4 years old in the sandbox, right? And kicking sand and fighting over, toys and all of that. We actually are
exactly,
grown ups. We have the ability to recalibrate this situation and become more enriched by it. And then, yes, you're going to get some feedback, right? People are going to, then your contrast is going to stir up what really is bothering them. And that's an
exactly,
and this is where the discipline of being an advanced human comes in. It is not always welcome. It is not always an easy path to hold that steadfast momentum of advancing yourself and those around you. People will go down fighting, but when you hold on to the compassion and the gratitude that you are in a position to see the difference and you offer that in, not everyone will take it, but usually someone else will be like, okay, wait a minute, Stefan, you're right. Let's meet the anger or the sadness or the hurt with more love, more compassion, because obviously our friend is hurting. He didn't really mean to do this, or, and it depends on all the different scenarios. Again, we're not saying if someone flat out intentionally hurts someone to go love them, but
of course.
there's something needed there. So again, gratitude for the contrast, and kudos to you for the observation and choosing that mindset where it began to, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment, it began to shift the play out. of what probably could have happened.
Now imagine if we all did that every single time we feel ourselves getting swept up into anything hypersensitive, because it really does start with something as small as that.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that I didn't bring up with my friends, but I thought about it afterwards, and I thought this is why we're able to have these deep divisions in every country on the planet.
Yeah.
Because if we can turn on our friends so
Yes.
quickly and easily,
Yes.
it's that much easier to do it to someone who we don't know, somebody who is other than what we are.
Yeah. And it also just keeps that frequency in place. This is the
Mm,
issue. We want to be part of the shift, not part of the same. Find again,
yes.
here's something so grateful today. Have gratitude for this conversation, the ability to listen, the ability to learn, to grow. Be that point of shift. Period.
So I have one closing thought that I would like to share, just to kind of bring our podcast full circle, because we started out by talking about needing those gaps, that time, that slow time, in order to really have space for the gratitude to come in, etc., etc. What I found really interesting, and I mean, well, I shouldn't say that because I see this all the time, but alignment, like when I something's on my mind, I see it kind of everywhere. But one of my favorite TV shows at the moment is The Good Fight, which is this legal dramedy, and it basically takes the political landscape of the US and the world and quite irreverently reduces it to a 55 minutes show, right? But in this episode, what I found so interesting was that the lead character gets suggested to go for, and I haven't looked into this, so by the way, medical disclaimer, nothing we discuss here is meant to cure or treat any illness or anything like that. This is just an anecdotal, what's what I'm looking for? Anecdotal story that I picked up, not endorsing any form of therapy or anything like that. But in this episode, she goes for ketamine therapy, or she gets asked to go for ketamine therapy, which is apparently a way they use a very controlled substance with meditative music, followed by talk therapy to help people cope with their lives. And she says to the doctor, "But why?" And his response is, "Because a lot of people are realizing that at least once a week or twice a week, they need 90 minutes off the hamster wheel."
Yeah.
And I actually had to pause the episode because I was like, that is exactly what is happening. We're
Yeah.
so caught up in the go, 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 go of the world around us,
Yes.
whether we're creating positive or negative or something just completely innocuous. There's this constant pressure to be moving forward when the universe doesn't work like that. The universe is all about checks and balances, swings and roundabouts. That's how the universe actually works, which is why meditation works, because you need that time to step back, to experience gratitude, etc. But I just found it really interesting that now Western medicine is catching up to that idea and using alternative methods to achieve the same result.
Yeah.
But it's just going to show that everybody's realizing how important it is to get off the hamster wheel a couple of times a week, so that we can actually be able to stay more present in our day-to-day life. Because I can guarantee you now, if I hadn't been doing that every morning for the past week, 10 minutes of breath work just before my day starts, I would not have had the wherewithal to have that conversation with my friends. I would have been
Right.
swept up in
Absolutely.
everything right along with them.
And again, I'm going to use these words right now at the closing. We are champions, we are warriors, we are soldiers,
Mm,
we are in this beautiful, sometimes battle within self, but then also we are explorers and astronauts, and right, and the galaxies and the vastness. So think about things that resonate with you, that bring you groundness, but also let your goals and your mind take flight. And between that space, use them. So I love the meditation, the journaling, the sitting, the music, the candles, whatever brings you peace and softness for a moment. And then maybe, journal or dream, or when you're out doing a hike or a run or a walk on the beach, let your mind take flight. There are ways to bring in calmness, softness, self compassion, and gratitude.
Mhm.
If it's only for a few moments a day, you are worth it. You will allow your environment to become a much kinder place, and you will add in a frequency to the collective that will help uplift the whole when you take moments for yourself, into gratitude, into self-care. And I really love that. Get off the wheel for a moment. The wheel can be a very cool place to be, but you need to understand the difference and when to be on it and when to get off it.
Exactly that. I think that's a perfect place for us to end off today. Laura always knows how to just encapsulate everything that we've been chatting about in a perfect little nutshell. I love it.
Cool. Have a
Well,
great week,
everyone,
everyone. Find something to be
phenomenal.
grateful for.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And we will see everybody on our next episode. Well, there's new episodes launching this week, but next live will be on Friday, I believe. So looking forward to that as well.
Yes.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.